Monday noon, the time is here. Shane and Abhi, loud and clear. Pacific vibes, we bring the heat. AI agents can't be beat. AI agents hour, let's go. News and guests, the big show. Solving problems, we do it live. Stay informed, it's a vibe. Building agents that work for you. Making moves, we see it through. Every week, a brand new show. Tag along and watch your knowledge grow. AI agents out, let's go. News and guests, the big show. Answering questions, we arrive. Every Monday, come alive. We want reviews, but only if it's a 5. We share the drama, we got the drive. Stay in the loop, it's the place to be. Shane and Abhi setting you free. Agents Hour, here to stay. Tune in Mondays, make your day. From the news to the problem solved. AI world, get involved.
Every week in AI, something insane happens.
And there's so much drama. Every Monday, we break it down live.
We do the news, we bring on guests, building in the space.
And we go deep into the stuff that actually matters.
Agents Hour, every Monday, noon Pacific.
Follow. Don't miss it. Peace.
This is Agents Hour with Shane Thomas and Abhi Aiyer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agents Hour. I'm Shane. I'm here with Abhi, like always. What's up, dude? How you
Nothing
doing?
much, dude. It's raining in San Francisco. I guess that's just always thing. How are you doing?
Yeah, the other SF is it's pretty nice today. It's gonna be a nice day.
Lucky you.
Mid-70s, sunny, blue skies. Well, if this is your first time watching, thanks for watching Agents Hour. We do this every week, as you saw. We do this Monday, right around noon Pacific time. We cover the news, we cover the drama. We bring on guests that are building in the space. And today, we got a couple guests, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, dude. It's been a wild week in AI, and there's just so much to talk about. But there was this really cool video that came out last week I want to share with everybody. And it's blowing up in SF right now in a good way. So there's this magazine called Silicon Mania. And let me pull this up and we'll watch it because it's kind of funny.
Yeah, at first I didn't know what to think.
Also, if I share, can people hear my audio?
I could, but also warning if you have kids around. This is a
Yeah. There's a little NSFW, I guess.
yeah, this
Bad
is not
words
safe. This might not
included.
be safe for work. Don't play this on a speaker. All right, let's do it.
So a little backstory before I hit play. There's a dude who's making a magazine called Silicon Mania. It's an actual physical magazine now, in addition to these weekly recaps. And you might see some people that you recognize. So here we go.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Vibe coding! Happy Easter! Click here, you piece of shit! Whoa!
Fuck my memory!
I'm not Satoshi! We are cooked! We are cooked! Delusional! Terrafab! Bye, Replit!
Memory!
Investigation! I love capitalism. AI! Another podcast! New podcast! New media! Acquired!
New partner!
Better fee! Change the world! $22 million! Everyone is a CEO! Expertise!
CRM.
Brain rotting! Electricity! AI video editor!
Fix my lips. Better education.
Finance is cooked!
Passion.
Hackathon! A24! Context! Fuck administrative shit!
What the fuck are you talking about?
Vibe coding!
So
Happy
that's
Easter!
that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because, you know, if you paid close attention, you might have seen like 2 minutes and 20 seconds in or something there. or maybe it was 20, I don't know, 22 seconds in, something like that. There was where Sam said $22 million and, and they made him look, so Sam, our co-founder, was on there. Obviously I didn't really know what to expect or what to think when I saw people tweeting about it, but yeah, it was kind of funny.
Pretty
I don't know.
funny.
It's
Plus
kind of
we
like this
know-
brain rot type,
Yeah.
like this new like brain rot style, which I don't really like. I'm not really into, but I know other people are.
But also, like, is the art style like Rick and Morty or something? Like, I'm just like a
it
Rick and Morty
does.
vibe.
Yeah, it does feel
Yeah, that's
very
really
Rick
good.
and Morty-esque.
Yeah, and it's all, especially all like the emotions on people's faces seem very Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
There were some other people in there. We saw Matt Palmer saying bye to Replit in there.
Yeah.
We saw our friend Adish from Mosaic, video editor. That was pretty funny. Man, there's just a lot of funny stuff in there. And then like the Sam Altman with the heads because he's getting investigated or something. That's pretty funny too.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of like, the really big players, but also some deeper cuts, which is awesome. Yeah, I guess that's why it's a good mix.
And I'm really curious how you get on. Maybe you have to like hit the algorithm for the week. If anyone else is trying to get into one of these, maybe you should hit the algorithm. I'm gonna share the link to the magazine. Definitely like a cool thing. So that's that.
Yeah, I mean, it just popped up on my radar, and then, I think he's definitely going. I think it's a he. I think I saw some posts from the guy that started it. Definitely going for like this kind of like sports tech TBPN type vibe, but like news, more like a news magazine.
Yeah. Also, like he was on Dave from Fondo's podcast where they talked about it. His name's Adil Mania. Let's just say. I think I'm not sure if that's his last name, but
Yeah.
pretty cool. Pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have people trying to tell stories in different formats. It's definitely because I think he does with the magazine, right? That's more longer form, but the brain rot video is just to get attention.
Yeah.
And it works. I've got our attention. We're talking about it.
Now the question is, can we get on there again? Hopefully we can. So
Yeah, two Pete.
yeah, two Pete. Maybe it's not as in unhinged. $22 million.
I think it's not going to land unless it is. We're gonna have to do
has to be
something
unhinged, I
really.
guess.
We're gonna have to do something unhinged on this show to get in there.
Maybe we have to wear suits and like, talk about things.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, well, I suppose we probably should get to the show. So I'm gonna do a little highlight for those that are tuning in, and then we'll bring on our first guest. So first, we're gonna bring on Jen from Pinecone. We're gonna be talking about some of the cool things that Jen's working on over there. We're gonna also be bringing on another guest during the news segment because there's been a lot of just security incidents that have popped up just over the last week, and I'm seeing more and more around other companies that are running into it. So we're going to bring on someone to talk a little bit of AI and security and how that ties into the recent news. And then we're going to get into all the normal drama, talk about all the usual suspects, Anthropic, OpenAI. There's some obviously launches. We'll talk about 4.7. We'll talk about Claude Design, all the things you'd expect.
Talk about Figma stock price. We got you.
Yeah, we got you here. Yeah, and with that, let's bring on our first guest.
Hi.
Hi, Jen. Welcome to the
Can you
show.
hear me?
We can hear you, Jen. Welcome to Agents Hour.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. A little nervous. This is my first time on a live stream, so.
Yeah, we do, it's not going to be too intense. We're not going to hit you with the really hard questions, but we'll hit you with a few that I hopefully will be you able to kind of showcase some of the stuff that you're working on. But I think maybe the first thing is, you're from Pinecone. I think a lot of our listeners probably know what Pinecone is, but for those few that might not, can you give us just a little background?
Yeah, Pinecone is, I guess we call ourselves an AI infrastructure company. Now we got our start in vector databases, actually a long time ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, before all the hype kicked off. And people are able to use Pinecone to implement a lot of different kinds of workloads around semantic search, to power a lot of really cool features in their product surprisingly easily. And that's something that caught my attention and made me want to work there, because when I was looking through some of their demos and docs, I was like, holy cow, like I've been working in the software for a long time and I don't know how else I would build these features, but now I see it's pretty easy. So I don't know, that's for me really something I get excited about, and I want to bring it to a larger audience of more people. And we have a lot of other stuff that we're working on. You'll be hearing about soon, but I'm not really ready to talk about. So let's just leave it there, I think, with the vector database story.
Cool. And so, you did share some info on some of the stuff you're working on. It sounds like you're rewriting Pinecone's Python SDK, but maybe not in the way people would expect. Can you talk a little bit about what are you doing? How are you doing it? How are you thinking about, just writing software in general in this new world?
Yeah. I feel like everything changed. Everything changes like monthly for me and how I'm working. I gave a talk internally at Pinecone back in February that I thought was like very forward looking, and now I look back on it and I feel like it's kind of cringe when it people want to see the tape, because I've just changed everything since then. But yeah, like everyone, I think we've had a lot of adoption internally of tools like Claude Code, and I pretty quickly was in a situation where I just needed to ship something really quickly, and I was trying to do actually the first rewrite. Now I'm on the rewrite of the rewrite because I've moved along. We'll talk about that more. But I realized, like, even though this just simple approach of let's take our ticket, let's like throw it into Claude Code and make a plan, it's definitely helpful, but you still run into a bottleneck pretty quickly, if you're caring at all about quality and trying to integrate this into a traditional software development process. And, I really took it to the max as far as like running a bunch of sessions in parallel with Git work trees. And I don't know, I sort of saturated my ability to work in that way. And I realized, like, if I want to scale up even more to have more leverage over my work, I need to like just revisit everything about how I'm working. And I think everyone is slowly reaching this realization, and it's scary for people because, those of us who've been around for a long time, we put a lot of our self-worth, and our value to the org comes from like the input that we give, like shepherding code bases and making sure people are doing the right things. And it's like much easier to just like integrate something that speeds up your current workflow than to say, okay, we got to like start over with a different approach, and give up some of that control. And anyway, so I'm fortunate. I think this specific project I'm working on, revisiting our SDKs, starting with Python, it's a good candidate for workflow experiments because it's self-contained. If I happen to merge something that is bogus or an agent does, like, it's okay, because it's really not until I choose to release the artifact that any kind of negative impact can actually happen. So that gives me a lot of freedom to try different things and see what's working, and iterate pretty heavily on the approach. And so what do I want to say about that? I mean, basically, I started out just by saying, like, I need to define what done looks like, and I think that's something that we skip over a lot of the time when we're just have like a narrow sort of focus on what we're doing, scope to a specific bug or a specific ticket. And I think some of these ideas are not original to me, definitely not. Like, people were talking about Ralph loops for a long time. Well, not a long time, but it was kind of a meme for a while. People were like, oh, if you just run a prompt in a loop, it will like magically accumulate into something useful. And that got me really curious about looping prompts and like what you could do with that. And like, what would you need to do to like make it more structured and hopefully more efficient. And so that's really the direction I've been exploring. So the first thing I did was Well, I already said the first thing I did was like start thinking about what done looks like, what correct looks like. Because this was a rewrite, I ended up actually creating a skill that would, I called it spec extractor, like very carefully examine with superhuman attention that a human could probably never do. Like go file by file, method by method through the old SDK and record what are the capabilities in here and what is the interface. And those are two separate things that need to be tracked in a rewrite. And very, very exacting levels of detail. I think in the end I had like, well, there's a post-processing step where I turn this into something called claims, which are like BDD style statements about things you can do. And in the end, I think I had about 3,000 of these statements, which surprised me. Like that was a lot considering the footprint of the SDK is really, going into it, I thought is not that large. But if you really want to capture everything and try to produce something that is a drop-in replacement, you're looking at like thousands of these conditions. And that's where it's like becomes really interesting when you start thinking about work in this way, because even if it's not a difficult task, it requires a level of attention and like tenacity that a human couldn't bring to a process. But it's no problem for AI. You just like let it run for an hour or two and come back, and you have like
before AI, we would have like definitions of dones that were like essentially scoped to what's humanly possible by a certain date. But I guess the definition of done now is like as thorough, as lofty, as ambitious as possible. Mm-hmm. But is there anything that you're running into by like having 3,000 tests to run? Like, does that delay your release? Do those same old things like matter anymore, or do you just loop until it is truly done and correct?
It is challenging for me still to like estimate timelines, because I know like, okay, well, I have this process that I believe is going to converge on the solution. I don't know if we're talking about like 5 hours or like 3 days, for it to get there.
According to Claude, it's like 12 weeks, when it tells
some of the uncertainty is like, there's a lot of uncertainty that comes from like Anthropic right now. They're like changing the quotas all the time. They're having outages. I lost 2 days last week because it kept giving 500 errors like in the middle of my looping thing. So I would leave expecting it to work for a couple hours and then come back and find like, oh, it died. So I need to like level up my tool some more with the error handling. But so that's a little frustrating. But I think I started out with this pretty mechanical understanding of what done looks like. And over time, I've like expanded it more into this other category of things, which is, I can create agentic review processes that I can control to apply like evolutionary pressure, essentially, if I have opinions about architecture or the technical approach that I want to make sure are being enforced. Outside of just the builder prompt, I can like have these things sort of checking the work of the builder. I can also like have review processes that are specifically prompted to focus on agent experience or user experience or performance. And that's been really interesting, because then you can like kind of take all of your opinions and distill them into these review processes that are going to be applied consistently every single time, which that's another thing that I could never do. Even if I'm like have all this accumulated knowledge and wisdom or whatever, there's only so much time in the day. I know everybody has had this experience of like someone asks you for a review, and internally, even though you just kind of feel like, ugh, like that is not what I wanted to spend my afternoon on. And so you kind of like try to get through it as quickly as you can. Not saying you don't do your due diligence, but it's not as thorough of a job as you could do if you had unlimited attention and energy. And now it's like, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I think pretty quickly. I think sorry, I'm excited, so I like stutter and stuff, but I think there's going to be a pretty rapid transition where things are going to invert really quickly from this fear-based place where people are at and like frustration about the pileup of reviews over to like some sort of automated process. I think the first step is like there are products already out there. I'm sure there'll be more that are doing like agentic code reviews. I've tried Cursor BugBot and had good results from it, but it's very narrowly focused on correctness of the code. And you're not able to like inject your own opinions or preferences or like ideas of what done is along other dimensions that maybe are a little bit more up to your own decision interpretation. So it's hard to make a one-size-fits-all product solution to enforce those things. So that's been really interesting. And then I augmented this approach. I had like kind of the basic planner, builder, reviewer, these processes all operating in parallel, checking each other's work. And, then I encountered some ideas that I'm sure you've heard about with Andre Carpathy's auto research.
Yeah.
So I started also making loops that are not part of that package of agents, but like kind of off to the side where I say, okay, let's do some performance optimization in a loop and let that run for 50 or 60 cycles, which, in the scale of time that these agents work is like nothing, and come back and like have some really dramatic performance improvements in my client code that I already thought was much better than the legacy client code that I'm replacing. And I don't know. I feel like that was something I went from, I heard about that. And since I was already in this mode of working with loops, it took me maybe 20 minutes with Claude to set up a new prompt with a new, everything it needed to run. And I let it, I started it and I went to bed.
Yeah. You do the overnight
Came back to results.
Overnight looping.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something you run consistently? Is it, performance? It sounds like that's just one of the mini loops you could potentially run. Is it something you run quite frequently once and
So
you think it's
far,
good?
I ran that one once for 50 or 60 iterations. And then after it had like 5 or 6 iterations where it didn't find any improvements, it's set up to stop. So it doesn't just burn tokens forever. My thought was, I'll probably incorporate this into some sort of like pre-release workflow that I haven't designed yet, as a stage to be like, just before you release, let's check if there's any low-hanging fruit that has been introduced over the last however long. But you don't need to run it continuously. I mean, like that specific one doesn't need to run continuously. I have a different step in my reviewer that's like looking for kind of task level mess ups or optimizations that it could make. But this experimentation loop, it found things that are kind of like decisions you make once that are going to carry across the whole client. Probably not need to be revisited that often.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've seen is, you keep hearing, and it sounds like you've kind of built something similar to like spec-driven development in some regards where, and some people really believe in it. There's like GSD, which stands for like get shit done. There's a whole bunch of these different approaches that everyone's trying to find, like what's the best approach for, and I think a lot of times it's, well, what does your team agree on? But the other thing that I'm curious is there's another camp that just says, don't spend all your time up front planning, just prototype really fast and then iterate on that prototype. But then you sometimes get into this like mess of code where it's almost better for the LLM to start fresh and write new code rather than try to edit existing code. So I'm curious how you're thinking about that.
I've worked both ways. I've done other internal projects where I just vibe coded with no plan, kind of. And you do make rapid progress and you learn from it, which is important. But I've found that like it's really hard to gain confidence later on that like, okay, this is actually ready or good. And as you change it, you're not confident. You're not like changing things you didn't want to change, which is like, I mean, that's true of like any kind of untested code base also. Yeah, I definitely don't have all the answers. I'm learning and evolving my process actively. I found it a helpful exercise to work interactively with Claude to develop these specification docs in some cases. The part of this that is a pure rewrite, I didn't, because I was really trying to reproduce something that already existed. But there are some new features I'm adding in where I had to go through this sort of greenfield approach of, I did start with a spec doc. And then I found that something that's helpful is like being able to reference specific parts very precisely. So like those BDD style claims, the 3,000 or 4,000 of them, however many, like each one of those has an individual number. They're sort of grouped by a section, and then they have a suffix and whatever. And so like that's helpful because like tickets are able to reference those numbers, the builder's able to reference those numbers. Later when we go to verify, like you can cross-reference everything. And so I'm learning that like I want to bring that kind of thing into my spec design in some way, even if it's not BDD. Like everything needs to be like uniquely addressable somehow, so that it can quickly locate that information wherever it's needed to be referenced, if that makes sense. And so that's like one learning that I definitely will carry forward as I try iterating on other approaches. It's sort of like there's a lot of interest I know in trying to optimize the information retrieval, the context token burn, and all these things. And there's a million tools I want to build to like optimize different pieces of how I'm using tokens. But I think really like if you have these identifiers, like agents are really good at just grepping to just exactly what they need. So you can get really far with a very basic system as long as you're kind of the context you're grounding everything on has these identifiers that can be easily looked up. And the same was true in like with my task definitions and stuff. I just put one in each file. I had a skill to like write them so no matter which agentic process was authoring a task, it would have a consistent format. And of course, like if I were going to scale this up further, and I'm sure I will, you know, I'll either go find a solution off the shelf that's more elegant than this, or I'll build one myself, because that's easy to do now too. Everybody's making custom software.
Yeah.
Just so that like you can save a few tokens. But the savings is not that large, I think, you know, if you set up your tasks so that they can be grepped for and found efficiently.
Yeah. So I'm curious
without consuming a lot of like stale context.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask a lot. So a lot of people, you know, that listen to the show we've been talking about Ralph loops for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you think that, you know, the standard Ralph loop really falls over? Is it just that you didn't define done well enough up front, or where do you think like people go wrong? If someone's saying like, yeah, I've been trying this Ralph loop thing, what's like the one or two pieces of actionable advice you would give them to say like, hey, maybe try these things first, and then eventually maybe you develop your own system?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I didn't invest heavily in the simple Ralph approach, but it seemed to me that I had this experience where like it would stop prematurely, you know, where this iteration thinks it's done, but I don't agree. And I think having some sort of definitely like journaling of progress or context so that it can have some sort of memory of like how many times has it reached this conclusion. Like I described earlier in my experimentation loop, like only when it tried 5 or 6 times and couldn't find anything else did it actually stop executing the loop. And so I think that's the sort of state management that is important to have a good chance of success at a long running Ralph loop type process that might not be obvious if you're just starting with like a shell script that's doing a really simple loop. Because the people who get excited about this approach, I think they're not like loops are incredibly powerful. Like I'm sold on that concept, but I think they do undersell like the amount of work that's needed to set up the information environment correctly, you know, to be successful. So
yeah, that's been my experience as well.
If they don't stop when they're, you know, incorrectly, then yeah, like subsequent iterations will figure things out and keep doing something useful, probably. I think it's also better suited to like smaller scope, you know, because the bigger the scope is, the more tokens it's going to waste on every iteration trying to figure out what to do next. If you just tell it like pick the most important thing and do it, then it's like it has to ingest everything, or at least maybe not everything, you know, keep going until it finds something. And something else that I dislike about it is, and I haven't talked about this yet, but like having a clear separation between your planning and your execution or your builder allows you to like do model selection and say like, well, if I have a builder that's going to do a really defined task with a checklist of steps and clear verification criteria, I can probably use Haiku to do that and save a bunch of quota, or like Sonnet. But I probably want to do like my planning with a smarter model, you know? And if you're just having like one naive loop, you kind of have to, I think you're being inefficient on the implementation side because you need the brains to do the planning.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents. I don't have
yeah,
data
Jen,
to really show that, but I think there's a lot
Jen,
of potential
did you have
there
a presentation? Did you ever? I see that. Yeah, you pulled up a slide, and we haven't really talked about it. So I wonder if you want to run through that real quick. I know so the audience can get more of a glimpse into what what we've been talking about here.
Yeah, I just put down some a bit about my journey, I guess, or high level concepts in here. I didn't want it to be too tied to the narrative because I thought we would just have an interesting conversation, which we have.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically I started out with the normal Claude Code chat experience and ran into the problems we already talked about and moved on to trying to design like my own looping agents and like context. I guess another thing I've learned, sorry, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so something that I've modeled in very early on was this idea that like there's only going to be one builder that changes the code. Maybe that, this might not always be true, but for me, getting started, it really simplified a lot to just have that understanding. There's going to be one thing that changes the code and one format of tasks. And on top of that foundation, I can have as many other loops and agentic reviewers and things I want to try out. Those can go wild, but just making that simple decision really clarified a lot for me. And it reminded me a lot of kind of how events flow in front-end applications. If you ever built like React with Redux or something, if there's like an event that happens in a leaf node of a complex system, you don't want those like different nodes in your tree like negotiating between themselves to try to resolve the state. Like you just want to emit an event and like send it back to the top of a process so you can process events in a consistent way. And that's really how I was thinking about tasks. It makes it really easy to monitor the progress. Like I can see as things are going. I have like a watch, just a simple terminal watch that's like grepping to see how many open tasks there are. And I see it draining, and as it drains, it's running out of work. That means that like I either need to come up with some more ideas for things I want this thing to do for me, or else I'm getting close to being ready to release. Or I really should say, do like manual vetting and verification. I'm not just YOLOing code out into the world. And I think it's that. So this is kind of the engine for how it goes. It's not perfect. I am still looking at what it's outputting, but not at the individual task level. It's more like I'm spot checking commits. I'm doing hands-on testing throughout the day now and then. And when I notice problems or if it's doing something I don't like, then to me, that's an important signal that I shouldn't ignore. And I also shouldn't discard this and go back into interactive mode. That's a signal that I need to like either, add context or fix some information that's incorrect that's in the context somewhere in my, I call them AI guidance materials just to broadly describe all of them, but it's a collection of different things. Your Claude.md, your convention docs, your product specs, your claims, like all that stuff is at different times and places, AI guidance materials. And so sometimes those things are wrong, or sometimes there's conflicts. Like for instance, maybe I have an opinion I've captured in my conventions that's in conflict with the interface of the legacy thing I'm trying to replace. And so in those situations, there is a little bit of ambiguity, and sometimes it doesn't get resolved the way that I would like. And so when I notice that, I have to go back and make a decision and make it definitive by updating all those documents and bringing them into alignment, or adjusting one of my reviewers or, whatever it is so that I'm applying the correct inputs and the correct review pressures to like converge on the outcome that I want going forward.
Yeah.
And just really trying hard to resist those like manual interventions. Yeah. Sorry.
This is interesting stuff. But we do have other guests that are coming on the show. I'm wondering, what's the best way, can we speed run the rest of these slides here? I don't know how many more you have, and then we can I would love to just ask kind of a final question around just Pinecone, next steps? What are you all working on? How do people? Well, what should people go do it? As a tangible next step if they want to do some of this stuff.
Definitely. So this slide here is what I already said. It's just like when you see the queue draining down, like that means you're getting close to convergence on your idea of done, which is very exciting. And if you want to experiment with some of these ideas, I did just flip the visibility of the internal tool that I've been using to run my prompts. I'm not here to like sell anything. It's just this is a thing that I'm finding helpful. If people want to check it out, it's on GitHub. At
Let me post that link.
Yeah, so it's called Rings, and it's just a wrapper around Claude Code, but it gives you some like ergonomic things around. You can limit the number of iterations. You can set a budget. That was a concern I had early on, was like letting something run too long, and like torch my whole quota. So I think that gave me the confidence to like be a little more experimental with what I was doing. And I talked about all this. I just wasn't referencing the slides as I was going.
Yeah, I'm gonna post
so that
this.
was missed by me.
Yeah,
So I think our GitHub is pinecone-io/rings for that tool if you want to check it out.
Yeah, so if you want to look at an iteration of, maybe an improvement on both spec-driven development, Ralph loops, I think we're all in this space trying to figure it out every day. It sounds like you've thought very heavily about this, as some of us have. But if you haven't, go check it out. Definitely check out Pinecone in general. Jen, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on us and chatting about your setup and kind of how you're thinking about this new world of just building with AI, which seems like it's as you mentioned at the beginning, every month it feels like it's something different.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a lot of fun.
Of course. See you.
All right, Jen.
Bye.
We'll see you later.
Dude, did you subscribe?
Dude, I host the show. Did you subscribe?
Did you subscribe?
Subscribe to Agents Hour every Monday, noon Pacific. Having all these like new little like bumper segments and stuff that Jan's cooking, it makes this thing feel polished.
I know. That was fun recording that one too.
Yeah. Joke's on you, everyone watching. I'm in a basement right now. But if you're just tuning in, welcome to Agents Hour. We do this every Monday, noon Pacific. Make sure to go subscribe, like the video said. I don't have to say that anymore because the video said it for me. We have to jump into the news. We're running a little behind, but this is really exciting because we got a guest that's going to be coming on in a few minutes. Let's kick it off, and then we'll bring on our guests, and we'll do the news.
Dude, it was an epic week.
All right, let's go ahead and bring on Rene. Rene can sit in for this intro. Why not? Rene, what's up?
Hey, hi, how are you guys doing?
We're doing
how are you
well.
doing?
Yeah, thanks for coming on short notice, by the way. It wasn't anticipated that we'd have all a lot of security related items to talk about, but you're one of the people that are on my short list anytime we have security things in the news, and I figured why not just bring Rene on to talk, give us
And
a
in
little
real
extra.
life.
Yeah, give us a little extra firepower to talk about some of the stuff that we are not just, we know about, but we're maybe not experts on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, super excited to come on here and talk about security news. Feel like it's only going to accelerate and you're gonna have more and more security news. So hope you'll show up a few more times here.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to go ahead and we got a few things we're going to talk about before we talk about the security stuff, and then we're going to turn it over, Rene, and I want you to definitely weigh in on that. But before we do, this section is new. I'm calling it "What the fuck is going on?" because first of all, Jensen was on a podcast and said, "We are not a car." I don't know if anyone saw this clip, but Abhi, you watched this whole podcast. What did you think of it?
Yes. Dude, it was really good. So yeah, just a recap of the podcast. It's a Dwarkesh podcast with Jensen Huang. It was, I would say, a strong debate. People are taking it out of proportion, like that. Jensen went off and wanted to beat his ass or anything like that. Very much a strong debate from a person with a lot of strong opinions, Jensen. Dwarkesh is only 25 years old. For him to even interview the guy, stand his ground, have that discourse, means a lot about him. But can I play the funny ass video?
Yeah, dude, you got
Okay.
it. Share it.
Give me 1 second. Hold on, let me find it real quick.
I can pull it up too if you want me to.
No, I got it. 1 second. Okay, so there's this whole thing about selling chips to China and all that type of stuff. And so he said that Tesla or Nvidia is not a car. So there's this hilarious tweet from Semi Analysis. I'll play it real quick.
You're not talking to somebody who woke up a loser. And that loser attitude, that loser premise makes no sense to me. We're not a car. We are not a car.
All right. I don't want to get copyrighted, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
hilarious. That's just hilarious. It's all in good fun there. But the main discourse there was about, should we not sell chips to China? How do you at what level does Nvidia play? And Jensen was saying there's 5 layers to the AI ecosystem, and the most important being AI applications. So they all funnel in and help each other. And then he also said this really nice quote, which is I have it written down here. Nvidia should do as much as needed, but as little as possible. So there's just a lot of different quotes from this that are really good. Made me really excited about building AI applications in the application tier. Super stoked about it. And to know that these layers are all supposed to help each other. But there's a lot of politics involved, of course, data center politics involved, of course, and then different nationalisms here. Like, should we sell chips to China? Jensen's like, yes, why not? A lot of the infrastructure is already being sold, but it's most important that United States stays on top. And then Dwarkesh had a lot of rebuttals. I don't know if he truly believes that. Maybe he does, or maybe he's trying to be devil's advocate for a great show. So I urge everyone to go watch it. It's pretty long, but dude, made me stoked to be working in AI. And also made me realize that Jensen's a badass. And there are a bunch of cool videos of him beating Dwarkesh up as AI videos. So if you want to see that, you can.
All right, let's go on to another, WTF moment. So Allbirds, if you're, Abhi, you ever bought a pair of Allbirds?
Yep.
Really? Okay. So Allbirds,
They're very comfy shoes.
I've heard they're comfy. I was talking to producer Jan, and Jan said that, he has quite a few pairs. But Allbirds, the shoe company, has now announced they're pivoting from shoes to AI, and their stock loved it.
They're pivoting from shoes to sandboxes, dude. That's what they're pivoting from.
Yeah, this is the world we live in. Now everyone's an AI company because it, maybe gets people excited again about something that, not saying, I'm assuming that they're not as popular as they once were.
Well, 350% rise in their stock, which is just hype, right? All hype.
Yeah, it's definitely hype driven.
They weren't doing too well anyway before that. So I guess it is time to make a change. But what infrastructure do you have? And what engineers do you have? I'm curious what they're going to be building.
Yeah, I don't know. But this is the moment that I think a lot of you, if you've been paying attention, you've probably seen some reports on some security issues, which is why we brought Rene in. So Rene, feel free to weigh in on some of this. I'll do a quick little highlight. The first one I saw was Vercel, we've identified a security incident that involved unauthorized access to certain internal Vercel systems, impacting a limited subset of customers. Please see our security bulletin. And then this is, a little hard to read, but Guillermo had a big post around the ongoing incident, basically saying a Vercel employee got compromised via the breach of an AI platform customer called Context.ai that he was using. Details are being investigated. Environment variables are stored encrypted at rest. Follow the security bulletin. They're working with a bunch of security firms, and Guillermo said it's his mission to turn this attack into the most formidable security response imaginable. It's always been a top priority, But it obviously got a lot of views, right? This is a big deal. So Rene, I'm gonna turn it over to you. What's your perspective on it? What happened? What's the aftermath?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is actually first props to the Vercel team. I think they've done a really good job being very transparent in what happened, right? Like what's the actual attack chain? What are the best practices? They're not beating around the bush with the actual security issue. So really good job there. I think this is actually a very good example of how like an application security issue, like with a vendor, like Context AI, can trickle down into an organizational security issue by the customer and then ultimately create a much larger attack path from there, right? So I think there are ways that the application provider, in this case Context AI, can certainly protect themselves, doing more security testing consistently, always on. And then there's also things you can do as a customer of these companies to protect yourself as well. So you can actually go to your Google Workspace and limit, for example, the application access that it has, right? I think overall, very good response from the Vercel team. I created a few slides to tell people how to protect themselves on this. I was wondering, is that something I can share here as well?
Of course.
Do it.
All right, cool. Let me see. This is my first time doing it with Riverside. There you go. So here's a thing everybody should probably go and do right now. Just go to admin.google.com/ac/owl/settings, and in there you can actually configure the setting for unconfigured third-party applications. So assuming let's say we're Vercel and our employees want to use Context AI, right? One of the reasons why this particular attack vector was fully exploited was because an employee could just gain access to it and then log in and start using it. But as you're going through it, you should actually just select that and make sure you effectively don't choose the default, which is the one you'll get when you use Google Workspace, but rather the second option that says allow users to access third-party apps that only request basic info. So this is a good way to limit your exposure. So if one of your employees goes to any sort of random application, signs in with Google, if the application requires anything more besides their name, email, profile picture, then they actually have to explicitly ask for access. And if they do, as an administrator, you actually have this apps pending review section that you can go through inside the Google admin portal and specifically allow certain scopes of the application. So for example, if the application suspiciously wants to download and delete all Google Drive files, maybe that is not the right scope you should grant it. You can still toggle that on and off as an administrator to really limit the exposure that your company is facing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's at least an item of tactical advice that I think all of us, if you're a Google admin, you should be looking at. And
I hope you're doing it in the background, Shane, for Mastra.
it's on my list now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think overall a very good response, but you really need to exercise defense in depth. That means really looking at how to apply your security posture across the entirety of your stack and across a variety of different call paths. Yeah.
There was a confusion on the company involved because Context AI is not the Context AI that we all know, because that got acquired by OpenAI. So on selling of that company, the founders sold Context.ai to another company, and that is the company that is vulnerable or causes vulnerability. Yeah. So people were very confused who is responsible. But yeah.
This was just popped up, kind of like unnecessary. I think it's kind of a low blow at a time when I would agree with you. I think Vercel did a pretty good job with this.
Yeah.
It's ultimately these incidents are never you got to take them super seriously. But you wouldn't expect if you've ever seen average database CEO in the X in the posts, you know that it's not going to be serious. There's also Lovable had at least some speculation. So Lovable has a mass data breach affecting every project created before November 2025. I made a Lovable account today and was able to access another user's source code, database credentials, AI chat histories, and customer data. They're all readable by any free account. And then saying like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Uber, Spotify employees all have accounts. The bug was reported 48 days ago. It's not fixed. They marked it as a duplicate and left it open. And then Lovable responded, we were made aware of concerns regarding the visibility of chat messages and code on Lovable projects with public visibility settings. To be clear, we did not suffer a data breach. Our documentation of what public implies was unclear, and that's a failure on us. Specifically for public projects, chat messages used to be visible. This is now no longer possible. When it comes to code of public projects, that is intentional behavior. We have experimented with the different UX for how the build history is surfaced on public projects, but the core behavior has been consistent and by design. Importantly, for enterprise customers, being able to set visibility public for new projects has been disabled since May 25th, 2025. So that's a lot of words. Rene, did you have a chance to look at this? What was your opinion?
Yeah. I think this is like kind of an issue that we see when companies naturally build out a bunch of features and grow over time, right? Like I think there's they are correct in that, hey, they might have not clearly documented what's public or not, and what is a feature versus not versus a bug, if you will. But I think it has a lot to do also with the expectations of the users. Like if you're logging in with a Google Workspace account into your tool, I think your default assumption is that the tools should be somewhat at least scoped to your organization, right? So even when it's public, like when you share a link inside your Google Drive, the default is that only people inside your organization can access it, right? So I think as a company, like Lovable is growing, and I mean, they're doing really well. They're growing extremely fast, right? I think they'll just learn a lot of those expectations that enterprises will enforce and accept as the default or assume as the default. So, but I think one thing that that stuck out to me is like if you compare this response versus like the Vercel response, it's very different, right? Like in terms of the level of details that were there. This feels a little bit more legalese almost, if you will. Yeah. And also the guidances around it is not necessarily clear, right? Like it's like I think what I like really liked about the Vercel response is like, hey, you should still, regardless of what is leaked or not, just go rotate your credentials, right? It's just best practice to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This brings up like a good discussion now. Like if AI is helping everyone build for like, let's say positive things, then like these hacker types have the same tool to do mayhem. And the amount of attacks can now go up, and you're using your agents to go and infiltrate different companies, find loopholes, and that's all good. If they're not doing it through a bug bounty program, then I would say there's going to be an age of a lot of ransomware type attacks. Like with the Vercel thing, many disclosures were not going through security. They were they were emailing individual employees, which to me is a freaking grift, Like Vercel has a bug bounty program. Most companies do. You should be going through the proper channels, because otherwise you're just a crypto grifter trying to get, money to your wallet, not paid through HackerOne or any number of these intermediaries that actually do this shit, right? Do you think that we are going to get into this people sidestepping bug bounty and actually just try to do these types of things? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we kind of been talking about the 10x software engineer this whole time, right? But there's also the 10x security engineer that comes out of AI. So naturally, you can improve both ends of the spectrum at the same time. There is actually a very interesting this phenomenon regarding bug bounties. So since generative AI has been used for a lot of offensive security, some companies are actually also going away from bug bounties because they're overwhelmed. Like for example, I think Crow recently shut down their bug bounty because it's just like there's so much noise that's coming through.
Yeah.
And then what's also difficult is, and we've experienced that ourselves at Casco, where we have gone through the bug bounties, and it's been really hard for us to get through to a person, even when we found a legitimately valid issue, right? Because now we're trying to argue with another AI that doesn't have all the context on the other end, telling us that we don't have a legitimate issue, even though we can provably demonstrate it. And so really it's about how the communication is done, not necessarily almost like where, because I think people are just still figuring out where the communication should happen, right? Like a legitimate researcher will not ask you for to pay them in crypto. They will not ask you for the bug bounty upfront without telling you all the details of the issues, right? Like when you are disclosing a bug in good faith, you should be providing all the information around it, right? Like the step-by-step reproduction of the issue, the impact, and also what was the success. Like the reality is just asking money in return without going through a official program is extortion, and that is not good, right? At least take the step on like being very upfront about everything and telling them exactly what to fix. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Well, Rene, we appreciate you coming on the show on such short notice, talking about security with us. Give us the little plug. What's Casco, and then we'll send you off.
Yeah, absolutely. So Casco is your always-on security engineer. Basically, companies pay us to hack them, to show them how they're hackable, if you will. And so yeah, you can find us on casco.com. It's casco.com. All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Rene.
Yeah,
See
thanks
you
for
later.
having on.
Bye.
Dude, maybe we need Security Corner with Rene. Could be a new brand.
Maybe. Might need to
Especially
be
if
a
these
thing.
things keep happening.
Yeah, I mean, it is becoming more and more, I was not planning on talking about security today, but then, you start to see things over the weekend, and then on, the Lovable today, had to talk about it. But another thing we have to talk about, Claude Opus 4.7 is here. How does it live up? We need to give it a reality check. Is it good? Does it suck? Is it somewhere in between? Let's talk about it.
Have you played with it yet?
I've been daily driving it for the last few days. I
Me
haven't
too.
noticed. So my first impression, I don't notice any major improvement over what 4.6 was when it was working well. I do notice an improvement, I think, over what 4.6 was last week or 2 weeks ago, because I felt like 4.6 had gone backwards, in my opinion. Anthropic and Claude would say no, but in my opinion, it didn't seem like there were things where I would expect to work that it took 2 or 3 turns to get to work. And now it feels like those things are mostly working again. But I think there's some, potentially negatives around 4.7 as well. It uses less reasoning tokens, I guess, but more tokens overall from what I've seen. Is that right?
Yeah. Simon Willison had a blog post about this. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, I
Unless
think we
it's
got
already
it.
in the news.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, great.
So yeah, let's talk, since we talked about it, Simon Wilson did a blog post, Claude token counter, and it shows 4.6 and 4.7 on the same task, and it was 1.46 times as many tokens, and the tokens are the same price, right?
Yeah.
So the same request now costs 50% more.
Yep. And with images, it costs about 3x more or so. Something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
like 300% more. And which is, so Simon Willison got to 1.46. The doc said 1 to 1.35. Abhishek Ray measured 1.47 on a technical docs task and 1.45 on a Claude MD file. So that's really close to what Simon Willison measured.
Mhm.
So I think Claude has maybe understated the increase in tokens. You're going to burn through those max plan tokens faster than you ever did before, by the sounds of it.
And if you put it in those numbers, I don't think it is that X better than 4.6. Like, to worth paying that much more or spending that many more tokens or whatever. So, and I also didn't know, like, daily driving it, I have not noticed any like marginal benefit. Maybe like a slight, but I also know that it's very timid and it doesn't actually want to make moves.
Yeah, I felt like it maybe stops a bit more frequently, but I haven't. It's doing what I expected 4.6 to do when
Yeah.
I first started using 4.6. So I think it's good, but I haven't seen any difference, right? It does
Yeah.
not even feel like a point release difference. It feels roughly about the same to me. Maybe I'm, this is the question that everyone asks. Am I using it wrong? Why am I not seeing
Are
the
we
benefit?
boomers?
Yeah. Like, am I using this model wrong?
Well,
What's going on here?
The homie Zach Dive from Adam CAD said that the best way to use Opus 4.7 is to build your own harness specifically around it to make sure it runs longer and longer. So maybe you have to do that, which seems whack, right? Like, why build just a harness just for one model? Like, seems really whack.
Yeah. I mean, Boris did have a tweet on some of the best tips. You can turn on auto mode. So there's no more permission prompts. I just use YOLO anyways, let it do its thing.
Yeah.
You can use /recaps to, basically short summaries of what the agent did and what's next. So after a long running session, you can have it do a recap. That's a tip that Boris said to use. There's a focus mode, which hides intermediate work and just focuses on the final result. So it just shows you what happened. Sometimes, especially when you let long running sessions, I feel like I scroll up and try to like skim it, but I really just want you to tell me like what you did.
Yeah.
You can configure effort level. You can give Claude a way to verify its own work. So there's a couple different techniques. You can check out this tweet. There's a whole bunch of things that you can see. But if you are daily driving and if you are testing it, maybe try those out. Maybe it'll help you feel like 4.7 is the improvement they're saying it is.
Yeah, I think the internet is not saying it right now.
I've seen a little of both sides, but Hashim says GPT 5.3 codex or GPT 5.4 feels like nothing or maybe worse. Are you saying, Hashim, that you think Opus 4.7 is worse than GPT, or GPT is worse than Opus? I didn't quite get which side are you on, Hashim? Tell us.
If it's the GPT side, the internet does not agree with you. So 5.4 is better.
You think so? You're team GPT 5.4 right now?
Nah, dude, never. I'm team whatever works.
All right. I think I've been using GPT 5.4 and was using Opus 4.6 quite a bit. Now using Opus 4.7. I don't know. I can't say that one is drastically better than the other. I do think that I've had pretty good experiences with 5.4. But I don't know. I wouldn't know if I quite call it as good. So Simon Wilson also had a post that Quen 3.6 35B on Simon's laptop drew a better Pelican than Opus 4.7. So why don't we just, why don't we look at this quick? So here's the one. So this is the Quen one. Looking the right direction, all's good. Here's the 4.7 one. This is not how you draw. This is not actually a bike. Look in the wrong direction. Something's.
You could argue that's a bike and it's looking backwards, but
yeah, but this bike would not actually work. Like, cause look at this. The frame's back here. The frame needs to be up here.
True.
So the frame's backwards.
It's a European bike.
Maybe. I don't know. It's a weird looking. Like, there's no stability here. I was like, that thing's not. Physics is gonna fail that bike, I think.
Well, he tried it again. Oh, that's even worse. Never
Thinking
mind.
level max. It didn't do much better. Still, like, okay. I don't, maybe, I guess, but there's just no support for that.
Where's the seat?
Yeah, there's no seat. You're plugged right in. And then, so Simon tried a different thing that maybe wouldn't be on the benchmark. So sunglasses on a flamingo. and it actually on a unicycle or something. What was the flamingo riding a unicycle? Sorry, generate an SVG of a flamingo riding a unicycle. You know,
Yeah.
kind of. They both are not very good, but you know.
Yeah, the Opus one is riding a one wheel, electric.
And then because I saw this tweet going around, I had to try it. And here's the result I got. This is a screenshot from my actual Claude using 4.6, my Claude desktop. How many P's are in strawberry? There are 2 P's in strawberry. I mean, come on. Come on.
Well, there are 2 P's in that sentence. Just
yes.
saying. But...
Yes, there is. And that must be what it keyed off of. But I didn't say how many P's are in this sentence. I said how many P's are in this word. It feels like, again, we've seen this before.
Skill issue. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, maybe. But you've seen this before. Like they're not the best at all aspects of language. They're not the best at all aspects of math. I think this proves that 4.7 is definitely still not AGI.
Yeah.
And then Theo, this is not Opus 4.7 related specifically, but kind of came out around the same time. And Theo is kind of dunking quite a bit on just Anthropic, Claude in general, saying that it's genuinely absurd how bad the new Claude desktop app is. You can feel the vibe code leaking everywhere. Every feature is barely integrated and full of edge cases that weren't considered. Every menu feels barren, stuffed in last second for some random toggle. Every hotkey breaks. I've lost track of how many bugs I've encountered. I found at least 40 in under an hour. Truly absurd, arcane shit. Stuff like voice mode, typing in all input boxes instead of just the one you have focused. Any of these issues would have been enough for me to do a massive postmortem and likely fire someone. It's a little bold, but a $400 billion company shipping this is absurd. I feel like I'm going mad. How does anyone seriously use this? It is broken on fundamental levels that are hard to comprehend. So I have a response to this, but what do you think?
Probably not. It's not the focus of the company, right? Or as much as Cloud Code.
But I don't know. Like with Cowork, I think it is the focus.
True, but it's Cloud Code Desktop though. Cloud Code Desktop traditionally has always sucked ever since it has been released.
Yeah.
Because more people, I don't use Cloud Code Desktop.
Well, so I'm assuming, and let me, I could be wrong. I'm assuming Theo is looking at the actual just Claude Desktop app, because in Claude Desktop you can chat. Now there's a Cowork tab, and now there's a code tab. And so assuming that's what Theo's referring to, which I don't know if there is even a separate Claude Code Desktop app. I think it's just the Claude Desktop app.
It's the code part of the desktop.
The code tab, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with him that there are just some absurd bugs in the app. It is kind of wild to me that I run into something and I'm like, that just wasn't very well thought out. Like, how did you not catch that? But my theory of why people don't care is because there's still this perception that Claude is the best models, and they very well may still be by a slight edge. And that still feels like magic to people. And you'll deal with some friction for some magic.
True.
Right? So when you do Cowork and it just takes over a folder on your machine and builds you a PowerPoint presentation in 4 minutes, and it 80%, 90% what you wanted, that's amazing, right? It's still like feels like magic to a lot of folks. And I think that's why they will look away from the bugs, and because of the promise of what it could do if they spin the slot machine and it gives them the right answer.
Yeah.
So
but I also think
that's
like it's a division of focus too, right? I'm curious. Like, does anyone actually use Cloud Code Desktop? I'm really curious. Anyone in the chat? You guys use that?
I know quite a few people that are using Cowork now.
Cowork, yes.
But that's in the Claude Desktop, I think.
Yeah, but it's not Cloud Code in the desktop.
No, but I do think, again, could be wrong. I do think Cowork is kind of just built on Claude Code. It's just Claude. The reason I was not impressed with Cowork is because I really felt like I could just do the same things with Claude Code as I could do with Cowork.
Yeah.
It's just Cowork is kind of Claude Code packaged for a less technical audience. It's just give it a folder, but I could do that with Claude Code anyways.
I mean,
so
Claude,
I think anything you. Yeah, anything
Claude
you can do
Agent
with-
SDK is also Claude Code CLI under the hood.
yeah,
So
it's just
everything is
all
Claude Code.
it all ties into the same thing.
Mhm.
That's why I think it's all the same product. I feel the same thing that Theo's feeling. I don't know, I think Theo's probably exaggerating with 40 bugs in an hour or whatever claim. But there are definitely bugs, and I've noticed them too.
Yeah.
But regardless, Claude and Anthropic keep shipping.
Yep.
So let's talk about it. This was the big one.
They released it on a Friday too. That's pretty epic.
Got 58 million views. Dang. So Claude introduced Claude Design by Anthropic Labs. Make prototypes, slides, and one-pagers by talking to Claude. Powered by Claude Opus 4.7, our most capable vision model, available in research preview on the Pro, Max, Team, and Enterprise plans, rolling out throughout the day. So I haven't used it, but I had a friend that I told about it. Tried it out owns a small business, tried it out for a flyer, one-shotted it, pointed at his website, one-shot at a flyer, on brand, pretty dang good, better than he could do manually himself, by far.
That's
And
tight.
then, of course, it was apparently just produces like HTML, so it's editable as well after the fact, and had a fully working one-shot flyer in a few minutes. So he was blown away, and he's used other AI tools as well. So maybe Figma should be a little worried.
Figma should be worried because their stock dropped so much. I think in the last 5 days they're down 3%. That's quite a lot. In the last month they're down like 20%. So
Yeah, and I think someone was on Figma's. Someone from Anthropic was on Figma's board. Stepped down after this announcement.
It was Mr. Mike Krieger.
Yeah, Mike Krieger. Yeah, that's right. So Mike Krieger was on Figma's board. Stepped down after. I don't know if it was right before this launch or right after the timing.
It was right before. So if you were a betting man, you could have made some money in the stock market.
Yeah, you could have done some kind of like Kalshi bet or something and made some money.
Yeah. Or just sell a bunch of puts or calls or whatever and make some cash.
So speaking of Theo's rant, this is kind of tied to that. We've redesigned Claude Code on desktop. You can now run multiple Claude Code sessions side by side, one window with a new sidebar to manage them all. Go find the bugs. Try it out if you haven't
Yeah.
already. But apparently there's some bugs with this. I'm sure they'll fix it. I think that's, that is Anthropic's playbook, I think. If I were a betting person, I think what Anthropic does is let's get something that's like 90% good, but the model makes it feel like magic. And then if people are using it, we're going to come and we're going to fix the bugs really quickly.
Yeah.
And we're going to make it better. And then the people that didn't try it on day one aren't even going to know the bugs ever existed.
Exactly.
And the other people will eventually give it a chance again if the models are good enough.
I mean, to ship so much so fast, you have to be okay with that. Like perfect is the enemy of great or good or whatever. You have to be okay with people hating, maybe finding bugs, having Theo rants, but then that anything he said, they'll just fix it. So it's actually a good mentality. I applaud them for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we have almost every week an Anthropic ship section because they're shipping. Routines, we talked about, at least maybe casually mentioned before, but routines are now in Claude Code, so you configure a routine once, and it can run on a schedule. This is very similar to like heartbeats in OpenClaw. I think it's it's another word for scheduled tasks, right? But the idea is maybe it's a little bit more context aware. OpenAI also ships at least some things. So they did a rather large update to the OpenAI Agents SDK. Agents SDK now allows you to scale codex-style agents in production without building the whole harness yourself. We've brought all the stuff of modern agents, computer use, skills, memory, compaction, and more to the same platforms you're already using. So if what do you think?
I think it's great.
They released an article saying Codex for almost everything. We're releasing a major update to Codex, making a more powerful partner for more than the 3 million developers who use it every week. Codex can now operate your computer alongside you, work with more of the tools and apps you use every day. So essentially, it seems like computer use for Codex.
Yeah, and then soon co-work for Codex, which you can
Probably.
already kind of do. They have like a integrations marketplace and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but it felt like Claude Cowork caught way more waves than OpenAI's integration stuff. They're a marketplace. Yeah. OpenAI also released GPT Rosalind, our frontier reasoning model built to support research across biology, drug discovery, and translational medicine. So
and this is
they're-
why Anthropic bought those bio people to compete in this
Exactly.
game. So
yeah,
you
in
ever
just
feel like
healthcare
everyone's
and
just doing the
research.
same shit? Like,
I mean, they're just competing head to head on everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you go back to when we had discussions on the Super Bowl ads that are like taking digs at each other, this is the OpenAI versus Anthropic is the Microsoft versus Apple, right? It is just they're competing head to head. Now the other thing is there's big players in the space, but it's also the MySpace versus Facebook. It is two titans. We'll see if they both win. If neither of them win and Google and Meta come in and X comes in, maybe they'll all be around. I don't think we'll have 5 big players, but
I think I'm gonna start rooting for DeepMind, just to be different.
All right. So let's go over some quick hits. Nico last week announced Open Agents, which is a coding agent that runs in the cloud. It's cool. It's open source. Go check it out if you want to run coding agents in the cloud. Gemini CLI released subagents. So each subagent comes with a separate context window, custom system instructions, and a curated set of tools. So you can create specialized expert agents, keep the main agent focused and context clean, delegate work to parallel agents at the same time. Is anyone using Gemini CLI?
I guess I have to now, given what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of placed your bet. You better get on this. If you're watching this, if you're in the chat, have you used Gemini CLI? How does it compare, in your opinion, to Claude Code? I don't hear much about it. I don't know of a lot of people using it, but they're still shipping. Cloudflare put this post out on April 16th. Cloudflare says, we just launched Artifacts, Git compatible versioned storage built for agents. Did you look at this at all? What is this?
So it's this idea that agents need a different type of storage, much like our friends over at Turso wanted to build are building Agent FS. But as agents try to edit files, you need a history, you need versioned artifacts, hence the word artifacts. So like everything can have a commit SHA, and I think it's probably SHA 256 instead of a SHA 1, but I'm not sure. I didn't look that deeply. It's good. Cool.
Sebastian said to the Gemini CLI, didn't use it once. All right. Yeah, me either.
There was some drama around this artifacts project, and it's not real or anything, but some guy was claiming that Cloudflare stole, or at least stole all the code from a similar project he was working on. But then Matt Carey, who I believe is in the next post that we have, showed the receipts like, hey, no, I started it 2 days before you. And they're writing this on Zig. So yeah, it's all interesting, new tech. It's cool.
Yeah, so Matt Carey said build agents that know stuff, talked about memory, which is a concept. There's some docs now on the Cloudflare docs around just memory, conversation history, context memory, ways to use memory when you're building agents. Human Jesse did also respond to the Gemini CLI post, said the best thing about Gemini CLI is they make it easy to copy commands and a few other quality of life things, but it's buggy.
Makes sense.
So Mark Benioff says, welcome Salesforce Headless 360, no browser required. Our
Dang.
API is the UI. Enter Salesforce and Agentforce and Slack platforms are now exposed as APIs, MCP, and CLI. All AI agents can access data, workflows, and tasks directly in Slack, Voice, or anywhere else with Salesforce Headless 360. faster builds, agentic everything.
So this is great. Just in general, the premise is great, right? Because Salesforce UI sucks. So this is dope. But why call it Headless 360? You know, what a dumb name. I guess you can't win at everything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would agree. You know, this has got me thinking though, something I've been thinking for a while, which is I really believe, like, I don't know about all the other Salesforce stuff. Not a huge Salesforce fan. Like it's fine. Like everyone uses it. You feel like if you get big enough, you have to use it. But one of the things I think that positions Salesforce really nicely is I do think Slack has a great potential for being the surface for agents. I really do. And the reason is because if you use Cowork, like if for anyone that's listening, if you're using Cowork, it's single player mode, meaning you go in, you're working on a project by yourself. That's how some work gets done. That's not how all work gets done. You're usually working with a team. And where's your team? Your team's in Slack. And so really your agent should be in your Slack. And so you can tag it, Abhi can tag it, your friends can tag it, your coworkers can tag it. You're basically collaborating with agents that are in the place that you get work done. So that's why I think Slack's kind of well positioned, because a lot of teams are using Slack. You know, Microsoft Teams, you could argue, is well positioned, but you ever tried to build an integration for Microsoft Teams? It's a nightmare. So Slack, because it's more usable, I think is very well positioned to win at least a chunk if they play the cards right. And I don't know if that's like building it in themselves,
And
which they started.
They updated the Slack blocks, so now it's like agent friendly. So you can render different types of UI now through the Slack integrations instead of just having your stupid ass chat from the past. You can have rich kind of bullet points and blocks and all this type of stuff. So it's all telegraphing what's to come, especially in Slack.
Yeah, I think again, this is good for them. I think it's the right approach. You know, the API can be the UI, at least for agents. But I just think, we don't talk about Salesforce that much. I think Slack is just really well positioned.
Dude, every salesperson is just not going to log into Salesforce anymore. Once they get into Slack, the daily actives on your Salesforce.com sandbox or whatever you got running, I bet you will go down, because that shit sucks.
Yeah, I think so. Andre says, damn, did I miss the Opus 4.7 part? You did, dude. You got to go back like 10, 15 minutes and then you'll see it. All right. Factory says, today we are excited to announce our 150 million Series C. That's a lot of money. Led by Khosla Ventures with strong participation from Sequoia, Blackstone, Insight, Agentic, Abstract Ventures, 20 VC, NEA, and Mantis VC. This puts our valuation at 1.5 billion and will accelerate our investment in research, product, and global go-to-market.
Coding agents are still alive.
And Factory is the one behind like Droid Missions, right?
Yep. They have a CLI and like a VS Code type IDE. Solid.
And I think the idea, if you're not familiar with Droid Missions, is you can kind of send a cloud agent or an agent on a task that can run for a very long time, go really deep, and kind of come back to you, right? That's kind of the dream with missions.
Yep. Yeah, congrats to them. Solid. I met some of them at the GTC. They were part of the Inception, NVIDIA startup Inception program. So they had a booth there, and yeah, just so many people were interested in missions. We are also in that program, so just letting you guys know, we are also.
Yeah, we are. Program. It's a good program.
As of last week.
So Quen 3.6 35B A3B is now open source. A sparse MOE model, 35 billion total params, 3 billion active, Apache 2 license. So agentic coding's on par with models 10x its active size, strong multimodal perception and reasoning ability, multimodal thinking plus non-thinking modes. And is this the one that Simon Wilson used to compare?
Yeah.
So
you should use it because it can draw a pelican.
Yeah, if you need to draw pelicans on bicycles, you should use this over Opus 4.7 because it does a better job. I don't know what else it does better at, but definitely pelicans on bicycles and flamingos on unicycles. So someone internally sent me this saying you can it's just kind of a cool thing. If you are interested in running local models, especially with things like, Quen 35B, right? These like slightly smaller models that you might be able to use. You can go to runthisllm.com. You can tell what kind of hardware. It'll tell you which models could maybe work. If you want a model you want to use, it'll tell you what kind of hardware you need to buy. So if you are trying to run your own inference, this is a cool little resource for you to see if what you have can work.
You're gonna need more than a Mac Mini, but you might get
Yeah.
away with it in a Mac Mini, actually.
Yeah, there might be
Mac
a few.
Studio. If you want to spend some money, get a Mac Studio. I was talking to some people from CodeRabbit that a lot of inference is still happening in open source. I think like more than 40%. So it's not just OpenAI and people doing their own, like paying for stuff. A lot of people are running their own things. The problem is the cost of you having the right hardware. So you're like trading inference costs for electricity and your hardware. But if it makes sense
Yeah.
for you, not everyone needs an Opus either, too. You could automate your, like, maybe some IoT type stuff with smaller models.
Yeah, even simpler things like productivity type tasks that are pretty well defined that you need just a little bit of intelligence for.
Yeah. The fact that we
I
use
also-
Opus for dumb shit is because it's free. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and we've been also like having some conversations with, like on device models as well. So I mean, these
Yeah.
models are getting smaller. There's questions of like, how can you find some models where there's enough intelligence to run it on a device? I think that's interesting, and we're starting to get there. Some of these models are getting good enough that, yeah, you're not going to have it do deep research for you and expect it to come back with a perfect report. But if you want a little bit of intelligence and it's well positioned inside the rest of your application, whatever it is you're building, you can get away with a lot smaller model.
Yeah, like imagine like a phone model. Maybe you have two. Like one is actually for reasoning, and one is just really good at tool calls, given the prompt. Just knows how to call tools properly. Those don't really need a lot. You can have like smaller parameters for things like that. The reasoning, though, you're screwed. Just saying.
Yeah, it's not going to handle the reasoning. All right, let's do a little GitHub star party. I think we've talked about this before, but it came up internally, and I wanted to share it again because we've been experimenting with it.
Yep.
This kind of caveman approach. Why use mini token when few token do trick? It's a Claude Code skill that cuts 65% of tokens by talking like a caveman.
And it works. It works. We're actually
we've
using
been-
this in Mastra code right now.
Yeah, we've been experimenting this with using it within observational memory in Mastra code, and so far it seems to be working, cutting down tokens usage a little bit. No noticeable degradation so far that I've seen. Just works.
And it's actually really interesting. One point here, I was seeing the before and afters on some of these. I mean, in observational memory observations, before and after. Like, if you're good at English, context clues of the words around it can imply the same meaning, right? So I truly believe that like this works. Like it really does, because it works as even if you're a human, right? Like it works if you know English pretty well, which LLMs do. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you can read this, and I know exactly what this means. Why use mini token when few token do trick? I know what that means, right? It didn't take me any longer to think through it. I know what it's saying, but it used a lot less tokens.
Yeah,
It
your
was-
brain's like, why is that so weird? But then you're like, I get it, but you sound like an
Yeah,
idiot.
I get
it.
So Andre asks, say I have a software as a service that handles medical data. HIPAA and GDPR are important. Should I try to run it locally somewhere? Limited customers right now, mainly for STT and cleaning it up. So should Andre try to run local models?
Yeah, but then you're dealing with medical data. I wouldn't go use a Bedrock
Yeah.
or something that's HIPAA compliant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a HIPAA expert, caveat, but there are things with HIPAA where if you do run it locally, it's a little easier as long as there are certain types of precautions you have to take to be able to like check the boxes. I don't know all of them, but I do know it's like the barrier if you're running it in your own local server box somewhere is a little bit lower than you maybe expect, but it still is medical data, right? You still have to take security precautions. That is on its own right kind of expensive, but as soon as you spring for Bedrock, that's pretty spendy too. Once you need HIPAA, you're automatically an enterprise, so that's challenging as a startup. So I think you want to do your research on compliance if you are caring a lot about HIPAA, and you want to run it in your own, data center somewhere. It probably can't just be in a closet, right? You're going to need some level of.
It can't be
I
in a
think-
closet for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you need like building security. You need like locks. Like there's certain like things. I don't know all of it. I just know I
Yeah,
have a
it's a whole
friend who's been
list.
considering it. Yeah, there's a list you have to check off. So I would do your research to see if the cost benefit is worth it.
You could rent a section of it within a data center and run your stuff there. I mean, it's still local, but it's not local to you.
Yeah, but you got to find a data center that can give you, if you're running your own models, you're going to need a GPU, and then you're going to have to pay for a dedicated GPU. I mean, it's going to be expensive that way too. You're probably going to be better off just paying Bedrock or trying to run it yourself, but I don't know. Bedrock might be the answer. It's a
Hey,
safer
Mac
answer.
Studio, dude. Just run it on Mac Studio.
Get yourself a Mac Studio, dude. All right. And with that, it's a star party. Go give this caveman repo a star. And while you're there, give Mastra-AI/Mastra a star on GitHub. Make sure you are following us or subscribing if you haven't already on YouTube at Mastra-AI. You can find us on X at Mastra. You can follow me at SMThomas3. You can follow Abhi at Abhi Aiyer. That was a good show today, dude.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff happened.
Yeah, the news was fun. It's cool to bring Rene on, get to talk a little bit security. A lot of, good drama like always. All right, everybody. This is Agents Hour. We'll be back again next week, Mondays, noon Pacific time. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Yo, that show's a wrap. We were live in the zone. AI Agents Hour, Shane and Abhi on the throne. Did you give us that review? Only if it's a 5. Jump on the tube, make sure to like and subscribe. Yeah, news so fresh, yeah, we keep you in the loop. Guests so fly, they bring the whole troop. AI on the rise, don't miss this power. Welcome to the show, it's AI Agents Hour. Did you just drop in? Is this your first time? Make sure to follow us on X and go like and subscribe. Yeah, learn the principles and patterns in our books. The Mastra.ai site, give it a look. Yeah, news so fresh, yeah, we keep you in the loop. Guests so fly, they bring the whole troop. AI on the rise, don't miss this power. Welcome to the show, it's AI Agents Hour. This is the end, we all wrapped up. Another showdown, another one coming up. AI Agents Hour's done, but the news doesn't cease. Shane and Abhi, we out of here. Peace.